Hey everybody, I'm JJ. You're watching Reality Survival. And today I just wanted to do a video that was requested by probably 25 or 30 different people. I don't know, a whole bunch of folks have hit me up after after I did the series on kind of the nuclear fallout, survival skills kind of stuff. And a common theme that I heard over and over and over again was, I live in a trailer house, or I live in an apartment, or I live in a really small house with no basement. What do I do? Okay. And there's really only a few options for you. Okay. And the answer isn't, oh, I'm screwed. That's what a lot of people put in the comments. You know, they're like, oh, I'm screwed. I got a terrible house or whatever. You know, I don't have a basement. I don't have all this stuff. You just got to think differently, right? You should make sure that you have a bug out bag. And again, let me just say this before I go too far. I do not think that we have a high likelihood of having a nuclear war here in the United States. I went from being like a 0 to 1%, under 1%, to now I'm like maybe a 4 or 5% at most. Chance. So that's a 95, 96% chance that it doesn't happen in my mind. Like I don't assign a lot of credibility to it, but the community as a whole is wanting to hear about these topics and all that kind of stuff. So that's why I was talking about it. So first off, like, take a breath. It's going to be okay. But you just need to change your focus. As opposed to sheltering in place, what you need to be prepared to do most likely is to go someplace else. So you need to think about who of your friends who has a house with a basement, all right? And talk to them about it. Hey, if there's ever a nuclear war, can me and my family come stay in your basement for a couple of weeks with you? We'll bring our bug out bags and we'll bring some food, and you know, we'll be as unobtrusive as possible, you know, or something like that. And then make sure that you have a bug out bag. Make sure that you have, you know, at least 2 weeks worth of food stocked up in some totes or something like that that you can just easily and quickly, you know, throw in a car or put on your back or whatever the case may be. I don't know how far they are and all that kind of stuff. But essentially, you just got to change your thinking. Instead of sheltering in place, you got to go someplace else. Now, if you don't have any friends with the basement, then think about joining a church that has a basement. Drive around, find some close by churches. Even if you're not religious, they don't know if you really believe or not. And it's okay to fake it, right? They're not going to care, right? That ain't going to matter. You know, show up to church once a month and say hi and hello and how you doing, so people know your face. And then if there's ever a problem, you can go to the church and get in the basement, take your bug out bag and all that kind of stuff and shelter there. And maybe you'll decide to change your mind while you're there. Who knows, if you didn't believe. But anyway, you know, that is kind of like the first two options that I would suggest. A third option would be, you know, in close proximity to your home. Drive around and try to find an industrial building or a business or, you know, abandoned buildings or something like that, something that's got a basement, you know, an old structure or something like that. And then just take a look at it and figure out what you would have to do to make entry into that place. And, you know, if a nuclear bomb had gone off, I'm willing to bet that if you were going down there to shelter, local sheriff's probably not going to prosecute you or something like that. You know what I mean? So I don't think you'd be in too big a deal. Just be careful about trespassing and all that kind of stuff in the meantime. But you kind of get my point. Find a place that's got a basement, and then be ready to move to it. All right. Now, if none of those things are available and you don't have any other options, then you could potentially, I mean, this would be so over the top paranoid. It's really ridiculous to even suggest it, honestly, but whatever. I mean, if you're really worried about it, then I suppose what you could do is you could pre-fill some sandbags, buy some sandbags and pre-fill them. And, if you're, it would just be silly, but you could put the sandbags in your home ahead of time, especially if you didn't have a basement. You didn't have to worry about the structure, falling through and that kind of thing. And you could have some additional sandbags built up, like in a safe room kind of thing to help protect you. Now, you're not going to probably be able to do too much of that in a trailer because of weight issues. You could put a lot of weight in a trailer. My mom used to have a king size waterbed in her trailer, and it didn't never floor collapse or anything. So you could put more than you think, but you got space constraints and all that kind of stuff. That's probably not going to be very realistic. And you don't really have enough time, after if one did go off somewhere, in your reasonable area, somewhere reasonably close to you, to fill up sandbags or anything like that. So that's not really an option. So doing something ahead of time is probably the only, real possibility. I suppose in a trailer house kind of situation, again, this is way more work than you probably would need to do. But if you wanted to fill up sandbags and pile them a couple of rows deep underneath the trailer, like where the skirting is, you've got let me get the whiteboard, hang on. All right, it's kind of handy. Thanks for whoever it was that made the suggestion. Okay, so let's say you got just a single wide trailer here, all right, doors here, and you got your steps coming up, and then you've got your skirting that goes underneath here. Now, most places already have, put some little windows here, most places already have some type of skirting around it, right? So if you were just bound and determined to make your trailer a place where you could shelter, then probably the best thing you could do would be pile up sandbags on the inside of the skirting, like 2 rows deep. So on the inside of the skirting, you're piling sandbags, or you could even just pick, say your door to enter the skirting was right there, then maybe you just do like an area this far or something like that, and you make a square underneath it, and big enough area for you to get down inside of there and stay underneath the trailer, and just kind of a one centralized little section. Then what I would say, and I got this idea from somebody in the comments, I don't remember who it was that made the suggestion, but I thought it was a pretty clever idea. He was saying, what about taking a big tarp and fastening it up here? You'd have to get a real big one on each side of the trailer, and then bring it down at a 45 to the ground, and then do that on each side and stake it out. And that way, any fallout that hits it is going to hit the tarp and run down and pile up down here multiple feet away from your trailer. So you're getting that inverse square law going on there, and it's not going to be as potentially hazardous to you. Okay, so that's a possibility. That's a possibility as well. Now the downside to this is that you're not going to have as much protection from the top, because the top of the trailer is going to get a bunch of fallout. But you do have distance on your side. You've got 7 feet or whatever, which is better than nothing. But there's still going to be some contamination coming from that direction. You go the first couple of days, until it dies down by the first factor of 7, and then you could pop up on your roof with a gas mask on and some protective clothing and a broom, and you could probably just sweep everything off to the ends. Be careful not to breathe that shit in. Make sure you got a dust mask on, and then you could go back down in, and then you would probably be okay to stay there for the rest of 2 weeks. Now, like I said, I don't think this is a preferred option. All right, I'm just saying if this is the only thing you could do, you didn't have any other options to go anyplace else, then that's the only way that I can think of to potentially make it somewhat suitable. But the problem is you're really going to need to have some sandbags piled up somewhere, and then you're going to have to stay down in there, and that's only a couple of feet high. You can barely even sit up underneath most single wide trailers, if at all, and you're going to have spiders and bugs and all that crap underneath there and everything, and it ain't going to be any fun at all, like not even a little bit. And then you got the problem of sanitation. How do you deal with your poo and pee and all that? I mean, you could potentially just put some protective clothing on, put a gas mask on, run outside, go up into the trailer and use that. As long as you had water to flush it, because the water might not be running in the city. It's just a lot of problems. The best solution is really to go someplace else. And with that tarp thing, you'd want to do that on both sides. So, you know, if that was the other side, then you'd want to do the other side as well, where you pull it down on that side. And you could even do it on the ends if you wanted to. I'm a terrible artist. But you get the point. Stretching some sort of a fabric down from the roof line out, 8 to 10 feet away or so, and then that would keep the fallout from collecting along the ground. Okay, so let's talk about apartments real quick. With apartments, there's not a lot of great options with apartments either. Check and see if you got a basement. Sometimes apartment buildings will have basements where they got storage areas or laundry rooms or something like that. If you can go there, go there. So, we'll say this is maybe a fairly representative apartment complex. You have your doors right here. Hold this up a little bit. So these are windows. This is each one of the units, okay? And then this space here in the center is a hallway, okay? And so, maybe there's, like I said, if you wanted to do it 3D, then maybe there's 2 units, going this way too. Something like that. Who knows, man? I mean, there's so many different configurations, it's impossible to be too accurate. But essentially, what you would want to do in a situation like this, if you lived in a higher building, in a bigger building, like a 4 or 5 story building or something like that, then you're going to want to try to go and you're going to want to stay right here in the center section, the hallway, in between the 2 units, and halfway up and halfway down. Okay? And that's going to put you the furthest from the edges of the building where the fallout will collect, and the roof where the fallout will collect. Okay? And you would essentially want to take all the furniture and everything that you could in this building and this apartment building and this one and that one, and you would want to pile it up against the wall. Put your desks, put your whatever stuff you could do, boxes, all that kind of stuff. Pile that up on the outside of the wall, and then just hang out here, right in the center of that building. That's going to be your best option. Now, if you live in a 3-story building, then you just go to the 2nd floor. All right. I mean, that's all you can do if you have to stay there. Again, the preferred option is find a place with a basement. That's really the best thing to do. You're going to get a lot better protection that way. So, I hope that makes sense. Try to see if I forgot anything. I think that's pretty much it. Oh, if you lived in a one-story house and you just have a foundation, a flat slab, then you're going to want to find a place in the center of the home and make that your shelter area, and then pile up as much junk around you as you possibly can. And then if you had the opportunity ahead of time, what you could do is you could stack some firewood, you know, like that on each side. You could you could put some planters, some raised bed garden planters, you know, along the side of the house. That's going to give you a couple foot of soil, you know, to go through. That would be good. You do that on each side, or maybe you do wood on a couple of sides and then the planters in the back or something. You just want to try to get as much mass between you and the fallout as you can. Again, that whole idea with the tarp, I think that's a pretty good idea. That would work in a situation like this too. You could take a tarp and attach it to the house, run it out and stake it down here, do that on all four sides, and then that's going to effectively keep the fallout out here instead of getting it right up close to your house. So if you didn't have the ability to stack up mass like firewood or planters or whatever the case may be, then you could just go with that tarp option, and that would work pretty good too. And at a point where it's an emergency like this, you could just buy the tarps, have some screws and a screw gun, you know, measure it out so that you know it's going to be big enough, and then you could just take and double that tarp over with some little washers on the screws and zip, 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 you know, every foot or so alongside the house, and then stake it out real good along the bottom so it doesn't go anywhere. And I think that would work pretty good to just at least kind of keep the fallout a little bit further away from you. I'm not saying for 1 second that this is a good solution or that it's a preferred solution, okay? I'm saying that it's a last option. If you don't have any other options, then maybe this will help somewhat. But as a rule, you should try to find a place to go with a basement, okay? But if this is all you got, then it's all you got, and you do what you can. You'll probably still be fine. You know, you might have some increased long-term cancer risk, and it'll be apparent to you. Like if you start to feel nauseous, if you start to, you know, feel like you're sick and stuff like that. And maybe I'll do a video on the signs and symptoms of radiation sickness, because I need to bone up on it myself. But I know nausea is one of the first things that you'll feel. And if you start feeling nauseous, then you can be like, hey, we got to move, because we're getting dosed. You know, we've missed something. There's some kind of a problem, and we need to move. And that really applies for anybody, regardless of your shelter situation. If fallout comes your way, you're told to shelter by the authorities and all that kind of stuff, and then after a certain period of time you start to feel real nauseous, and it's persistent. It's not just nerves or something, you know, it's a persistent kind of sickness and nauseating feeling. Then you need to find another shelter, because something's happening and you're radiated. So you know, take that for what it's worth. I don't really know what else to say. This is just kind of the stuff that I could think of to maybe make the situation a little better. But yeah, it is what it is. I mean, you know, join a church, with a basement. Honestly, I mean, I think that's a real good option. Or find some friends that have a basement. So anyway, guys, thanks for watching. I hope this is helpful. Don't forget to live 6 P's. Proper prior preparation prevents poor performance. And before you go, if you have to change your mechanism from sheltering in place to going someplace else, you want to make sure that you got an EMP shield on your car, okay? This is one situation where I would say that an EMP shield is fairly important, and it might be more important than having a year's worth of food stocked up. Because normally I say don't worry about the EMP shields unless you got all your bases covered. But if you're a person who, you know, either lives really close to the city, or your plan is that you're going to have to bug out and go someplace else, you need to make sure your car works. And even a localized detonation, so even if it's not high altitude, if it's just above the ground or at ground level, if you're within line of sight of where that happens, there will be an electromagnetic pulse. Now, it's not going to shut the whole grid down, it's not going to do all that kind of stuff, but it is going to affect the vehicles and all the electronics and all that kind of stuff in that area. Okay, and it's going to be a smaller area than if it was a high altitude burst, but it'll still affect those vehicles and stuff. So if you need to have reliable transportation after an EMP shield, or after an EMP, after a detonation, then make sure you get one for your vehicle. They're real easy to put on. It literally takes about 30 minutes, if that. And if you use the discount code Reality Survival, it'll save you $50 per unit. So head over to empshield.com and check that out if that's something that your situation dictates. You know, again, like I said, I normally don't recommend them unless you've got your bases covered, but if you're in a situation where you have to be mobile if there is a critical incident, like, you know, people who are close to the city, or somebody who's in a situation like we just talked about, then you might want to go ahead and get one. It might be a good idea if you're worried about it. But anyway, that's it. Have fun, stay safe. We'll see you on another video here shortly.